Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today I want to read an article that I came across actually yesterday. And it was funny that I came across this article because it spoke to another video that I'm gonna have coming up. I can never say exactly when I'm gonna put up a video, but it kind of plays into what the topic of another video is gonna be, right? So let's just talk about the title first. The white people that white people don't want and who stick like glue to black people. I'm sure that whatever side of the race, racial category you might fit on, you've seen people who, I don't know, place themselves in scenarios where they may not naturally fit. I remember some years ago when I was in high school, we would always have a senior trip. And for whatever reason, the senior trip, always seemed to fall into the destination for the white seniors and the destination for the black seniors. But what I noticed is that there were always in the mostly black group, wherever they might be going, whether it be like Jamaica or Bahamas or wherever, that particular year we went to Bahamas. The opposite group, the mostly white group, went to Jamaica. So what I noticed was that, because people, after those trips were over, people were sharing their pictures, of their trip. And I remember because, I took a bus to Florida, and then from Florida, we took a boat over to Bahamas. And I just remember there were a few white people on the bus. And then when I saw the trip of the mostly white trip that went to Jamaica, I saw that there were a few black people on that trip. All right. So, people will get in where they can fit in. Right. But this is something that I've spoken about a lot when it comes to this idea of palmitaging in Brazil, this idea that a lot of black people would prefer to have relationships with white people. They have a feeling like, well, white people are superior, they're more attractive than we are, they have more social status than we do. So, if I can get with a white person, it'll validate me as a person, then I can have whiter kids, right? But that's in the romantic realm. I'm not necessarily talking about the romantic realm. It's just like in social situations. I've seen this type of thing that goes on. I'm going to uh, just read the article that this young woman wrote. I found it on the Gelades website, very popular Afro-Brazilian website it's mostly targeted towards black women. But it was intriguing what she said, because as I'm reading through what she was talking about, I just thought about times in my life where I kind of felt that this was happening as well. So anyway, the white people that white people don't want and who stick like glue to black people. All right. Before I get into this video, just take a moment and like the video if you would. Share this video, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell. Always got new videos coming up. With that said, let me get right into the material for today. Then I'm gonna talk a little bit more about it in my own words. Okay. Today's material is by Fabiane Albuquerque. And as I said, it was sent to the Gelades website. So listen to what she has to say. I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about some of these pictures and some of the links that I'm going to share to put this into more context. She says, there's a phenomenon I've been meaning to write about for a long time. I have plenty of examples, but I just needed to articulate a possible explanation for this problem. White men and women who prefer to be around black men and women who approach us in any circumstance that demands our attention and presence. It sounds cute and could even pass for anti-racism, but it's not. There's something about many of them that has always bothered me, and now it seems clear to me. The approach isn't because of black people, it's because of themselves. It's like looking in a distorted mirror where she or he sees him or herself looking at us in a superior way. I was invited to a party at the home of a French family. As usual, I was the only black woman. There were other foreigners present, such as a Russian woman, but I was the only black woman. With a glass of wine in my hand, I strolled through the small garden of the residence, crowded with people chatting in small circles. I stopped and, without pretension, looked at the people at the party. A very thin woman with red hair and cigarette-darkened teeth approached me. "Where are you from?" she asked. I'm Brazilian, I replied. I could tell by your hair that you must be Latin American. Latin American, she added. I generously listened, and she continued. I've been to Brazil. What a wonderful country. What wonderful people. I went to Salvador. Wow, what a magical place. And she went on for a long time describing the places she'd been to, how she felt, and how much she wanted to go back to recharge what she called her energy. At no point did she ask me anything about me. Nothing. The center was her, only her. The owner of the house passed me several times and with her gaze asked if everything was all right, if that woman was bothering me. I nodded and replied that everything was fine. After all, I know very well what white people want from me in most cases: confirmation of the ego that has been built up as the center of the relationship. After I had freed myself from the woman, the hostess said, she's very inconvenient. I'm sorry if she found you. After that sentence, I spent the rest of the party thinking. With all the people available in the room, including her compatriots, she found just me. And here comes the point. White men and women who can't stand their own tend to approach Black people for attention because they believe they are superior and act as if we have to thank them for being there. Since they can't compete with the white ego because among their own they are considered inconvenient, clueless, less than the others, with us they consider themselves to be more. A couple of years ago, I worked with a Frenchman who wasn't very well liked in the workplace. He was too pandemic. Once, when his colleagues made the umpteenth joke about him, he spontaneously uttered a revealing phrase. I'm going back to Colombia. Everyone loves me there. He had been in the country for 6 months a few years ago. I found his outburst interesting. He felt nostalgic for the Latin American country, not for its culture, its people, its history, but for himself, for what he received from the people, for what he was there and wasn't in France among his colleagues. In other words, loved. So basically, she's saying here, okay, he's getting some type of like idol worship in a Latin American country like Colombia, where he just feels like, maybe a nobody among his own people, right? And there are plenty of examples. For a French teacher who was considered narcissistic and inconvenient by many French people, but idolized by Brazilians who said they preferred our people to their compatriots, her taste was due to the excessive attention she received and the idolization of her whiteness. Ah, the whites. So closed in on themselves and so far away from others. White women outside the standards of beauty who say they only like Black men because they give them so much attention. White men who only look for Black women because they don't stand a chance with white women, as if the affirmation and recognition of this superiority depended on us. And the latest example happened recently during the Sixth Congress of Black Researchers of the Midwest, what they call Complexo. Several participants told me that a white man appeared at the event at the Federal University of Goiás, and nobody knew who he was or what he was doing there. Goiás being one of the states, I think it's like I don't like the Midwestern region of Brazil. Goiás is the state that's in the middle of Goiás. You've got Brasilia, Brazil's national capital city, what they call the federal district. So that's inside of the state of Goiás. She's talking about this event for Black researchers that was going on at the University of Goiás. So this guy interrupted and nobody knew who he was and why he was there. This man asked to speak a few times, took over the microphone and started teaching a group of researchers how to act in politics and even suggesting sources for understanding racial issues. He even had the nerve to ask the name of the Congress because he didn't know. All he knew was that it was about Black people, and he went there with a straight face, wanting to shine and teach. Of course, he was put in his place. But the lack of power to intervene in an event that wasn't even where he wasn't even asked to speak at and barely knew was what was striking about this incident. His whiteness gave him a free pass to take the microphone, thinking that Blacks, unlike whites, would have something to learn from him. And his resourcefulness was such that he really believed he was in a place where he could reign. I see white men and women who their peers don't want to be around and who stick to Black people. It's a show of grotesque narcissism that could pass for anti-racism, but it's not. There is a subtle or not so subtle approach. Anti-racism is not self-centered. Anti-racism sees the dignity of others and is on the front line to defend it. The clingy white person puts black people on the front line to defend his or her image, namely that constructed by whiteness as the most intelligent, sensitive, civilized, who always has something to teach others. Let's keep our eye open so that we don't serve as ego strokers or mirrors for frustrated whites. We have no affections to waste on those who don't see us, but only themselves. Okay. Just to remind you, she mentioned this event called Complexo, which is an acronym for the Congresso Brasileiro de Pesquisadores Negros da Região Centro-Oeste, which can be translated as the Brazilian Congress of Black Researchers from the Central West region. It is a conference organized by Afro-Brazilian and Indigenous Studies centers in the Central West region of Brazil. So, I included a couple of pictures in this article. Okay. This was just one I found on the internet. I think this woman might be somewhere in Africa surrounded by some black kids. This is Fabiane Albuquerque who wrote the article. I want to review. She has a book out called Cartas a Homem Negro que eu amei, which means letters to a black man that I loved. This is a popular Brazilian personality, Xuxa Meneghel. I've said many times she's probably one of the wealthiest women in Brazil. She's known for a series of variety shows targeted at children. Everybody in Brazil knows who Xuxa is. Her and her daughter went on like a missionary retreat or event over in Africa. I think they went to Angola being one of a few countries in Brazil in Africa that speak Portuguese. So this is her surrounded by black children. Then this actor, I think she's in she got known on the Big Brother Brazil reality show. Her name is Rafa Kalimann. And in this picture, she went over to Africa also to do some charity work or whatever. A Síndrome de Salvador Branco, which means the white savior syndrome. A lot of people have talked about this in Brazil. Like a lot of white people will pop up and put themselves in situations where they're surrounded by non-white people, and they come across as looking like some type of hero. Like, oh my God, you're helping the poor Negroes, right? There were a number of stories like this over the years. And, on the internet, people always made an issue about this, these white Brazilian women going over to Africa, taking their pictures and selfies just surrounded by black people. Like, look what we're doing for the Negroes. You know what I mean? That's the sentiment that people had in seeing these pictures. This type of picture here, the complex of the white savior, is something that you see in Brazil as well, something that people complain about. This is Xuxa's daughter, Sasha. She went over to, it might have been Angola as well, and she's surrounded by all the black kids, all the little African children. And it's just like, nobody can say that she did this on purpose. Nobody can say that she meant to come across the way that she did, but this is definitely how people took it. Definitely the way that people took it. So then here's an article. Sasha and Xuxa Meneghel, they had they realized a missionary travel to Africa. So this is Xuxa and her daughter, again, they're posing with all the black people in the country. So I talked about this as well. Sasha Meneghel, I guess she's studying fashion. So she's over in Africa. This is her mother, Xuxa, Sasha and Xuxa. And it was funny because somebody looked at it, this conservative YouTuber named Livia Zaruti, and she says Sasha Meneghel went over to teach African fashion to people in Angola. I mean, just think about that for a minute, right? More about Rafa Kalimann. She's this is her posing with poor children in Africa. And they post these pictures online, and it's just, it just gives you a really kind of like a queasy feeling, like, what are you doing? It's not to say that she doesn't genuinely care, but when you consider the racial dynamics in Brazil that says white people are on the top of the social hierarchy and black people are at the bottom, then they even look even more as being superior when they compare themselves to people over in the African continent. So whether they mean it or not, this is what it looks like. It's like when people are doing charity work, is it necessary to really post everything on your social network? Like, look at what I'm doing. People who genuinely do stuff from the heart, whether they're donating money or donating their time or they're helping somebody or a group of people, they don't just plaster that over their social media to say, oh, God, look what I'm doing. No, they do it out of sincerity. It's like a lot of people don't even want to be known. Like, look, I'm not over there trying to show myself as being superior or look at me taking care of these, unfortunate people. Whenever I would be in a situation, I would always look at how it could look. I remember on my very first trip to Salvador Bahia in Northeast Brazil, I went to one of my friends. He would organize these cultural events inside this favela, the poor regions, that surround, major cities or whatever. And he would teach African history. He would teach about like African oriented religions in Brazil, like Candomblé. And I came there were about 25 people, from, teenagers to people in their mid 20s. It was probably about 25 people there. And I'm just sitting there in the audience. I'm filming. And this is my first trip to Brazil, so I'm fascinated by, what he's doing. But after about half an hour, 40 minutes into his like lesson, a couple of people I was sitting in a circle with everybody there, and they says, "Look, we want to talk to the American brother. We want to, can we do a question and answer with him?" And I had never thought of that. Of course, I obliged. Like, I wanted to know. I was there learning about who they were. They wanted to know who I was, right? I ended up coming. I sat in the middle of the circle, and they just started popping questions. At that time, I didn't really understand Portuguese that well, so my friend, his name was Marcus. He would field the questions and translate them to English. I would speak and he would translate them back into Portuguese. And I looked at it as just a question and answer. But I remember some years ago, I ran into another Black Brazilian friend. She was in Georgia. She was going to the University of Georgia at the time, and she was from Rio de Janeiro. I showed her the video and she says, I know you probably didn't mean it this way, but the video looks to me like, they're just in awe of you. And this is something that I've consciously, like, that's not something that I ever want to be able to project to somebody else. When I used to teach at this English school in Sao Paulo, I remember that the owner of the school, he had on the billboard in front of the school, we got a native, speaker of English here, come, sign up for the classes, right? And the thing that I didn't like about what he would do is he would call kids. I would, in between breaks between classes, he would call kids over to look at me like, hey, come and check him out. He's American. And, kids would just look, for the kids who were like 7 and 8, obviously, they're looking up at me like, wow, it's an American. And I'm like, I told him, like, Carlos, don't do that. I'm a teacher here. I'm not here to project myself as being superior to anybody. I'm here sharing my knowledge of English because it's something that can help people, in their careers and to grow up in a country where if you can speak English, it provides certain advantages to you. So that's never been me to present myself, oh, look at the American. I've never wanted to ever come across that way. Something else I wanted to mention here. Let me see. It was this picture and then this picture. I think I've already been through all of these. Let me see. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about here? Yeah. So this is another picture of Hafa Kalaman. Again, the white savior complex is white volunteer work in Africa, or is this really what this is all about? This is a journalist on the global television network, Rodrigo Bocardi, and you see a picture of him over in Africa, surrounded by the African children. And I'm just saying, I can't say for sure how he's looking at these African kids. I know what it makes me feel like when I see a picture like this, right? And so the other thing is that I've witnessed this type of thing in my own life, things that I've seen where I feel like you may or may not have meant it this way, but it's certainly the way that it came across to me. There have been times, and I've mentioned this in terms of the whole thing about palmitaging in Brazil. My point is that it's not that there's anything wrong with interracial relationships, but what I note is that white women in Brazil, if they can't get with a white man of the standard of life that they want to get, they can always go down on the economic pyramid and get the best from the Black population. And I've seen that at work so many times. I couldn't get a successful white man, so I can get one of the best out of the group that's socially lower than we are. So the white woman has that choice. Now, the other thing that I felt, and this has happened, several times over the years. Um, you see it's a very common today in the United States. I live in Michigan where you see more and more interracial couples. And again, I'm not saying there's a problem with that, but I am saying that part of the growth in that is because there's a conflict going on between black men and black women, as well as the anti-racist campaign that's been going on in the United States for, you could say, at least 50 to 75 years. There being more white people are more willing to be in relationships with persons who are not white. But what I know, and this has happened to me quite a few times over the years, that white women who who society probably wouldn't consider to be attractive. They may not be, more than your basic 4 or 5 type, physically attractive. They might be overweight. And from time to time, I would get a white woman that looked this way approach me as if, okay, well, black men, they're beneath me. I'm white, so even black men will take me. Black men like bigger women. So if I can't get a white man, at least I can get with a black guy. Now, and I'm not saying a person has to necessarily be, that's what she's saying, but that's the feeling that I had. It's like, okay, this happened in a gym once. I was working out in the gym, me and one of my boys. And I just noticed this white woman was following me wherever we went. And it was just like, okay, what's going on? And my man was looking at me like, dude, I think she's trying to holler at you, right? And finally, she stepped to me and said something. And it was just like, everybody has the right to speak who they want to. If you're attracted to somebody, you approach that person or whatever. But the racial dynamic that was embedded in that situation, I just felt like, most white men probably would not have wanted this woman. But in this case, she felt like, well, if I can't get a white man, I can still get a nice looking black guy. That's just the feeling that I've gotten. And I'm sure there's been people out there who have felt that same sentiment. So I wanted to introduce that point because in a video that I have coming up, I'm going to be talking about that as well. So, this video was not necessarily about the white savior complex, but at the same time, it is in a way, because it's like, white person being at a black event, like, oh my God, this white person is here. This must be a really important event, and then they can get all the accolades. They can get all the special attention because they're the only white person in the room. Like, I may not be highly admired among other white people, but among black people, I can consider myself, higher on the social hierarchy. Anyway, curious to know if any of you have felt that type of environment. Have you seen where you got that type of feeling from somebody white in a mostly black environment? I can't speak for everybody. I know I've seen situations like that, not just this happened to me, but with other people. Anyway, what did you all think about today's video? Drop a comment in the comment section. I always like to hear what you guys have to say. Like this video, share this video, consider subscribing to the channel, click on the notification bell so that you know when I put up new videos. With that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post here at Black Brazil Today.